So welcome to another meeting of First Friday Breakfast Club. I'm Byron Huff, FFBC President. My pronouns are he, him, his. We are an association of gay, bi, and trans men. FFBC was formed in 1996 and is a 501c3 entity making contributions tax deductible. We'd like everyone to mute your microphone also, and this meeting is recorded. Since the formation, FFBC has raised more than $400,000 for scholarships that are awarded annually to Iowa high school seniors who have done significant things to reduce homophobia and educate LGBTQ issues in the schools and communities. $3,000 scholarships are awarded regardless of gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, or protected characteristics. The real strength of the scholarship program, aside from recognizing and rewarding significant and often courageous acts of the recipients, is the opportunity for FFBC to send a representative to high school graduation ceremonies throughout Iowa, often in the front of an audience that thinks they have never seen a real live gay person. That's also assuming we can have live graduations again, but we're hopeful. Anti-LGBTQ bills being proposed by the Iowa legislature is alarming for our community, which makes our work more important. That is happening across the country, unfortunately. While donations are always welcome, we make a more formal request this time of year because your donations will fund scholarships awarded this coming June. Well, now it's going to be July. Sorry, I need to correct that. We moved it back to July due to the pandemic and issues with getting students on board applying. Be awarded this June if you give by April 30th. April 30th is our cutoff, and then we kind of group and put on our website who donated to the program for that year. The technology allows more payment options. You can go to the website, ffbciowa.org, and make a one-time or recurring donation. But that technology was thanks to the generosity of Brad Holland, Joe Rates, and Ascendant Wealth Management. If you have not donated, I hope you will. You can also designate First Friday Breakfast Club as a beneficiary of the United Way donation. So if you're in a company that does that every year, you just write on the line, I want to designate it to First Friday Breakfast Club, and we do receive donations from them. Amazon also offers Amazon Smiles, which is a free program that doesn't cost you anything, and many purchases on Amazon provide some funding to FFBC. It's part of their philanthropic program. On our website, you'll find access links to resources, archive monthly newsletters, which we have years of them now, thanks to many people, David Cotton and Wade Peterson. For the newsletters, there's audio recordings of past speakers, currently back to April 2020, and we're trying to go back a little farther than that. At some point, we even hope to have some video of the speakers, but that's still in process. We're making strides. Thank you to David Cotton, Nicholas Williams, Wade Peterson, Joe Rates for many updates to the website, including the color newsletters back to 2005. I said there was many years. I think that's all the further we're back. So be sure to go to ffbciowa.org. And thanks to David and Cotton and Nicholas for the Zoom meetings. We hope to have in-person meetings someday. We're taking advantage of these virtual meetings, having speakers from all over the country while we're doing it. But also when we do go in person, David Cotton is working on the ability to have people view it and join us remotely. So that will greatly increase the number of attendance, we hope, and people able to join us that aren't able to do it in person. Keep in mind, if you want to be on our email list, send to info@ffbciowa.org, and you can also forward the invitation to others who may like to see our amazing speakers. At this time, we would like to give new attendees of FFBC the opportunity to introduce themselves. We had this tradition during in-person meetings, and we've not done it during the virtual meetings, but someone mentioned it would be a good idea if someone would like to introduce themselves. If you're trying to unmute yourself too.
I can introduce myself real quick. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Hey, my name is Ryan Larson. I'm up from the Ames area and met Ryan Crane last week and he invited me. So thank you for welcoming me.
Welcome, Ryan.
I'm Terry Hale with my husband, John Hale. I attended one other time, but this is John's first time.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, welcome. Anyone else?
This is Rick Googles. I used to be a member.
I'm John Newsom and my husband's Dan Blair, and this is our first time on and looking forward to the information.
From Chicago. They're friends of ours when we lived there. Glad you could join us, John. Go ahead, Rick.
So this is Rick Googles. I was a member a long time ago, and so now back in action. So good to be here.
Great to see you. Someday we want to see your condo with all the remodeling you've done.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, everyone. Be sure and mute your line if you unmuted. At this time, we'll, I have one announcement, sorry. Iowa Safe Schools Annual Governor's Conference is virtual on April 12th and 13th from 5 to 8 p.m. on both those evenings. One of the keynote speakers is Quinn, who'll be the first openly transgender Olympian when they play in this year's 2021, which was originally 2020, Tokyo Olympic Games. Go to iowasafeschools.org to register, and FFBC will also have a virtual booth there as well. Newsletter is distributed electronically on April 1st if you're on our list. You can see the newsletter at ffbciowa.org, but also, again, email info@ffbciowa.org if you'd like to receive our newsletters, meeting invitations, and so forth. The copy deadline for newsletter, if you'd like to contribute, is the second Monday prior to the breakfast meeting. So the deadline would be April 26th for our May newsletter. Let's see, our next board of director meeting is always a Tuesday, normally the Tuesday after this meeting. So it'll be April 6th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Let me know if you'd like to participate and I'll give you the Zoom instructions. Rick Miller will now introduce Chris, our speaker this morning, Chris Godfrey.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see such a good crowd here this morning. I am very pleased to be able to introduce a fellow Northwest Iowan to the First Friday Breakfast Club. He is from Sioux City and grew up there and graduated from high school from Sioux City. He then went on to Drake University where he got his undergraduate degree and then continued on to law school there, graduating in 1998. It is interesting that he then joined the law firm of Roxanne Conlon, who many of us will know here locally in Des Moines especially, and got a lot of background in law, I think, with workers and employers and equity issues and other things that involve workspace law and so on. He then, with that kind of a background, got appointed by then Governor Tom Vilsack to become a part of the Iowa Workers' Compensation Commission, which is a government commission that oversees employment and worker issues and resolves them. There had been a terrible backlog in which some people waited nearly a year to get their cases adjudicated. And it is amazing that in his term here in Iowa, Chris Godfrey was able to get that down to 1 month. And so kudos to you, Chris, for getting all of that done. That was incredible. Chet Culver then later reappointed him for another 6-year term. And when Branstad was elected partway through his term on the board at the commission, Branstad wanted Chris to resign. And he told the administration that he had been appointed for 6 years and he would complete a 6-year term, at which point the Branstad administration decided to dock his pay. They decided to give him less pay than he had been earning before. And so ultimately, there was a lawsuit, and discrimination was described because of his being gay, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 2019, the court said, no, the government was wrong. You cannot dismiss anybody or dock their pay. And Chris Godfrey won that landmark case, bringing a suit against the state of Iowa. So our congratulations to you, Chris Godfrey. We are so proud of you. You are our superstar here this morning. And my old friend, Dan Johnston, would say that he was very proud of you, as I am.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank you for that great introduction. I'm going to try to fill in some of the points in that timeline and give you a little bit of a background of the trial and the lead up to it and some of the things that have happened since that trial. I want to apologize first off because my voice is not so good. It's cherry blossom time in DC, and that means it's also my allergy time, I think. So I've not been feeling the best, and I hope my voice holds out. And I apologize if I have to cough and whatever else during the course of this speech. I'm going to try to share a PowerPoint that I put together that has some of the information. Let's see if it'll work here. Whoops, except I didn't start it at the beginning. Let me start at the very beginning here. So as Rick mentioned, I was born in Sioux City, and I like to see Terry Hale here on the screen. I remember as I was in high school back in Sioux City, watching her on Channel 9 News, and I think she was in the same bowling league as my parents. So, so it's good to see so many people that I know here today. So my family is originally from Northwest Iowa. I still have a ton of family up in Northwest Iowa, and a large part of the family is now also moved down to Des Moines, where the big growing city of Des Moines. So when I go back to Iowa, I spend a lot of time in Sioux City, but also a lot of time just getting to see my family that's also down in Des Moines. I was very proud of my education from Sioux City East, as where I graduated from high school. I'm a strong supporter of public education, and I've been sort of disappointed to see some of the actions that have been taken in recent years against public education in the state of Iowa. It's another one of my passions that I'd like to fight for, as we go forward. So talking about my work, when I got out of law school, while I was in law school, I actually clerked for Roxanne Conlon at her law firm, and we had several really exciting lawsuits that she litigated, and I was fortunate to be a person that got to assist her in those cases. After that, I returned back up to Sioux City and worked at a company called IBP. It was a meatpacking company, which was then later taken over by Tyson. And I did defense work on defending IBP and their workers' compensation claims. And I did that for a little over 2 years, and then moved to West Des Moines to another law firm. Did mostly defense work, represented some companies like Come and Go, Solar Transport, and several other self-insured corporations. Then I did just about 4 years working for Max Schott and Associates. And at that point, I switched over and started doing claimants work, where I'd represent individuals who were became injured or ill in their employment. And I also did some federal and state level employment discrimination matters. So I had a pretty diverse background in terms of learning of some of the issues that people have in the workplace, whether it's due to discrimination or due to injury or illness. And as I represented people and was an advocate for people, I never thought that I myself would be in that situation. I remember so often having clients be deposed in the course of their workers' compensation claim or their discrimination claim, and knowing how nervous they would be. And, I would tell them, it's just answering questions and just be honest, and it'll all be fine. But having lived it myself, it is terrifying. You don't know what people will ask. You don't know what things may, be said against you, and having to, stay emotionally stable in the course of that. So it is a little bit difficult. So In 2006, I was asked by Governor Tom Vilsack to take on the position of Workers' Compensation Commissioner. That was the position that got me into government service, and it was a great opportunity for me. I enjoyed litigating cases before the agency, but I knew some of the backlogs and how that was impacting my clients, and thought, I wanted to do something different, not just advocating for my clients, but advocating for the system itself. So I took on that challenge. There was a backlog of cases. It did take, most often over a year to have an appeal decision issued in a workers' compensation case in 2006. That year, when I was at the Capitol during my confirmation, one just kind of funny story. The first day I went across the street with the individual from the governor's staff who was going to walk me around and introduce me to the senators, took me up to one of the Democratic senators who was from the Des Moines area and introduced me. And it was the first time I'd ever met him. And the thing that he said to me that was just so funny, but yet came to full circle, was he said, "Oh, well, you'll be perfectly fine as long as you're not gay." And he didn't mean it, to be offensive to me, but he knew the culture of the Iowa State Capitol and, the majority party at the time. And it sort of came full circle. I would have been fine, but I was gay. So I continued on with my service in the workers' compensation system. Was reconfirmed unanimously by the state Senate in 2009. And then Terry Branstad and Kim Reynolds were elected in 2010. Before they were sworn in, they asked me in a letter to resign, and I kindly wrote back as to why I would not do so, because I had just been confirmed to a 6-year term. I gave up a legal practice to take on this position. I was doing the job well. I was involved in several workers' compensation organizations that were tied to that employment position. And it was a job that I was enjoying and was making a difference. So I refused. Then before they were inaugurated, they had me out to their campaign office and again asked me to resign. I again said no. So then from that December meeting until July 10th, I was significantly retaliated against. There were things that happened on nearly a daily basis, just being shunned in the office, saying good morning to people who would not say good morning back, who were the political appointees, being excluded from meetings, having a governor's retreat where people that were in the same position as me but in another agency being asked to go so that they could learn about the new budget processes, the new personnel processes and the like, things that I needed to know so that I could do my job with the new administration. And I was shut out of that. So on July 11th, I was called across the street to a meeting, and I thought it was a meeting probably about the computer system that I was attempting to implement at the work comp agency, which would allow us to go digital so that all of our documents could be filed electronically, and we would no longer have paper files. I thought that's probably what the meeting was about. When I got there, I was met by Brenna Finley and taken back to an office of the chief of staff. And that's where they sat me down and again said, well, we brought you over to ask you to resign. And I again said, no, I'm not going to resign. Told them the things that I had accomplished and told them that I wanted to work with them. So at that point it was, well, resign or else. Would it change your mind if we told you that we were going to cut your pay by $40,000 from the top of the pay scale where I was, in which I had earned on my own merit to get to the top of the pay scale, to the very bottom of the pay scale, earning less than individuals in my own agency who were not attorneys, who didn't go to law school, who didn't have the student loan debt from being an attorney. So I again said no. So Brenna Finley walked me out of the office, and as we got to the edge of the office complex area, she opened the door to escort me out. And I just remember turning around and saying to her, I look forward to working with you for the next 4 years, and just walked away. So that's where we got to the point where we needed to file the lawsuit. But I wanted to talk just a second about the act of cutting my pay. I think we all take pride in our work. We feel that when we put in a hard day's work, that we're entitled to that pay. And just as a human, having some level of worth for ourselves. So when someone cuts your pay, to me, that's not just discrimination. It's not just being, it's just flat out evil. It's a way to attack me as my worth. It's a way to say that my efforts of what I had done meant nothing, even though I know it meant a heck of a lot to the people that benefited in the workers' compensation system and the people that worked in the work comp agency who had a much better working environment after I had arrived. One of the things my partner said, if you were a man with a wife and 2-3 kids at home, they would never have thought to slash your pay, because they wouldn't do that to a man that had a wife and kids. But because I was gay and I had a partner, they knew that evilness, to show that I was not an equal human being, is how they decided to act. One of the things that Roxanne pointed out recently when we had our Supreme Court oral arguments that I thought was so pointed was I was twice introduced to the state Senate, walked down to the well of the Senate, introduced to all the senators. And I was the first gay man in that position who was introduced to the Senate. And I was walked down with my partner. So they knew that I was gay. There was no dispute of the fact that the entire Senate caucus and the people that worked there, and at that time, the later lieutenant governor, now governor, was in the Senate. It's not believable. And obviously a jury didn't believe that they didn't know that I was a gay man. So the process, as we started, this is sort of all of the processes here, but the main thing is waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting again. The asking me to resign was now, well over a decade ago. The trial itself was July of 2019. So now we're waiting for a Supreme Court determination as to whether or not the jury verdict will be allowed to stand. So as we went through the litigation process, I was lucky enough to have probably the most preeminent civil rights employment law attorney in the country, in my opinion, litigate my claim. And in the time before we even got to trial, we twice went to the Iowa Supreme Court. The first time we went to the Supreme Court was to allow us to sue the defendants individually, which was something that I think will benefit additional people in the future as they sue a state official for wrongdoing. But the second one is really where Roxanne made a significant advancement in the ability of Iowans to protect themselves based upon the constitutional rights which are embedded in our Iowa State Constitution. So where we were before this Godfrey 2 case was you were limited to statutory causes of action, which meant that you needed to file under Chapter 216 for discrimination. You needed to file an emotional distress claim, etc., based upon the already put in place causes of action. What her lawsuit did was open the door to say that when you're denied certain rights, like due process rights, an ability to have notice and be heard, those types of things, there's an inherent right within the Constitution of the state of Iowa that you can enforce those. Because if you can't enforce them in court, what good are our constitutional rights? They're not worth a whole lot if there's no way to hold somebody accountable to them. I'm really proud of a lot of the cases that have come subsequent to the Godfrey 2 decision, which has allowed people to sue state actors, whether it's children that are abused in state homes, or I know there are several female prisoners that have been sexually assaulted or harassed, that have used the Godfrey 2 claim. There was a woman who was horribly wrongfully arrested in Northwest Iowa that's used it. And I believe several of the Black Lives Matter protesters who were arrested improperly over the past summer may also be using that as well. So we all learned the inherent rights that are given through the Iowa Constitution with the Varnum case, and we followed up with that in Godfrey 2. One of the things that has always been a point of pride was with the state of Iowa. It's always been a very liberal, expansive court. The first ever decision of the Iowa Supreme Court was In re Ralph, which was decided back in 1839, and it basically allowed a slave who had escaped, I believe, from Missouri to become a free man in the state of Iowa. We also desegregated schools earlier than Brown versus Board of Education. It's been a court that's expanded civil rights and said that our Constitution is expansive. One of the things that I want to point out is the importance of a jury trial. A lot of people don't understand and don't give consideration to how powerful the right to a jury trial is. The Seventh Amendment to the Constitution of the United States gives us that. And we've heard, several times, "Give me liberty or give me death" was Patrick Henry's Constitutional Convention speech that made so much history. But within that same speech, he talked about how the trial by jury was the most important right in the Constitution because it put every citizen on the same level. So whether you're a governor or a state employee, you're on the same level. Whether you're, the largest corporation in the state of Iowa, or you're one man or woman standing up against that corporation, you're equal in the eyes of the law. I'm going to pass over this. Only, I guess I'll show the top picture. You'll see me standing with the police officer. That was actually at a birthday party for Roxanne Conlon. And that night we had a police escort because there were actually death threats in the middle of the trial against us. And that was something I never thought I'd need protection from anybody for, but that it was a unique trial. It was a unique situation in state history, and I guess why wouldn't that have happened? You'll see in these pictures, down at the bottom is the trial team, Roxanne Conlon at the head of the table, me not being able to eat for most of the trial other than probably smoothies because my stomach was so upset. At the top, you'll see all the banker boxes full of documents just up and down the hallways at Roxanne's office. So many exhibits, so many depositions taken, so much work that she put into this trial. I think that gives you just a small taste of that. One of the things that happened during the course of the trial that was really bothersome to me, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there's a book that was on a table. And in the courtroom, I sat on the right side of the table. In the trial team, Roxanne and Paige Fiddler sat to my left. I was sitting next to defense counsel. And on that table, he started to put a book on the table, which was basically a religious anti-gay book. My attorney, Paige Fiddler, asked the judge to have him remove it, or at least turn it so the jury would not be able to see the side of the book. He was allowed to keep the book. So the next morning, we walked into the courtroom, and Paige walked in just a couple seconds late, and she ripped a piece of paper out of her notebook, and it's the piece of paper here on the left, and on it, she wrote a Bible verse about, not wearing your religion on your sleeve. If you're going to pray, pray in private. Keep your religion to yourself, basically. Made a dramatic flare of taping it to the desk right next to the book that defense counsel had. So then from there on, I ended up drawing a rainbow the first day. And then this is a couple days into trial. Every day we wrote new Bible verses on it. And eventually, I believe the book actually went away. But The top is just from Roxanne's opening, talking about, refusing to be bullied, refusing to back down. So to hear someone like Roxanne talk about you in those terms is a pretty neat thing. So the trial took about 6 weeks. We had 9 jurors, one of whom was an alternate. We had the trial moved to Jasper County because of construction in the Polk County Courthouse. There was horrible dust and air pollutants, which caused breathing problems for most everybody. So thankfully, we were able to get the trial moved to a beautiful courtroom out in Jasper County in Newton. On July 15th, the jury came back, and this is actually the jury form. And I would say they got it 100% right. If I was allowed to fill out the jury form, I probably wouldn't have filled out one thing different, including the damages amount. I think they got it 100% right. And, they found they found that they did not believe Governor Branstad, nor did they believe Brenna Finley primarily. And to me, that was justice. The dollar amount of what the jury verdict was, obviously is important, but having this piece of paper for the rest of my life is pretty darn important to me. And that means a lot. One of the things that during trial was so surprising to me was how people could believe that they could just say that they were supportive and everything that they have done in the past would go away. Governor Branstad, then ambassador, was suddenly a gay rights champion. I don't know if any of you ever knew that before or know it now, seeing what's occurring in the state legislature in Iowa. But apparently now he's this advocate for our cause. So, I suggest that the First Friday Breakfast Club invite Governor Branstad, Ambassador Branstad, to speak to you sometime, and he can tell you how great of a champion he is for civil rights for our causes. So you'll have to let me know what he says. So I wanted to talk just a little bit to show you what your tax dollars paid for in the defense of this claim. So this statement here was in their post-trial brief, 151 pages in. They tried to say that I couldn't have emotional distress damages because I already had stress-related health risks based upon my sexual history and lifestyle. Isn't that in and of itself discriminatory? I mean, really, that's what your tax dollars are paying for. But it only gets worse. Here again, 2 jurors refused to validate the plaintiff's lifestyle. I said, what the heck is my lifestyle? I work from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, go home and watch TV with my partner and play with my 2 cats and go to bed. That's not much of a lifestyle they needed to validate. But it's the terms of lifestyle. That went out in the 1990s. We don't say that. It's just discriminatory to say that we have a lifestyle rather than who we are as people. The part on the screen here, a couple lines down, like many gay men, plaintiff lived a tortured existence that resulted in acute anxiety and depression. So did you know that you're all living tortured existences and have acute anxiety and depression simply because you're gay? Isn't that disgusting? That's your tax dollars paid for that. And it really only got worse with some of the comments. This one, I had lost my dad and an aunt. It was important for me to let them know that I obtained justice, and unfortunately they both passed away before that had occurred, so that was very difficult for me. But the post-trial argument again really shows just how crazy this was. Like Sacco and Vanzetti, defendants can only pray that the trial phase of the Godfrey saga will be viewed by history as the low point in a dangerous era of Iowa jurisprudence. All citizens of this state should hope that the Godfrey trial will not be remembered as a harbinger of the end of the American democratic experience. Man, I didn't know I was so powerful, overturning all of American democracy. I mean, it was enough when they blamed me for the economic downturn in 2007. I thought that was kind of crazy as part of their defense in my case, that I was responsible for the economic downturn, but now I'm apparently also able to take down American democracy single-handedly, or at least with the help of Roxanne Conlon. Again, just, comments, I won't get into it all, but, I wanted y'all just to see how just discriminatory the commentary was. I was going to add this on here as well. We had an expert, Kevin Nadal, who spoke on microaggressions and other ways in which we could establish that the defendants had knowledge of my sexual orientation. And the thing that what's on the screen there isn't really towards what I'm going to talk about, even though they attacked him in that way as well. But as he was on the stand, they asked him about venereal diseases. Someone that came, to speak about legal standards and biases and the like. They showed a clip of him when he was a young man, and I think he was probably in college. He did a stand-up comedy routine, and they focused on venereal disease. I mean, yeah, it's hard to even explain what goes through your mind at that point in time. But again, that's what your tax dollars are paying for. So here we are now. This was taken down at the museum in DC. The trial ended, I believe, on a Friday, and the jury got started. I flew back to DC on Sunday. I think I slept for like 36 hours and then got on a flight. And this was the museum after the jury came back. So this would have been on Tuesday. Each morning they go out and they did in the past, they'd put out the front pages of the newspapers from each state across the country. And as I would walk to work, I'd often walk that way just so I could, see what was on those pages. But I knew that day that my jury verdict would probably be on the page. So some nice tourist took this picture of me. So now we've gotten through the trial phase. We're now at the Iowa Supreme Court, and the state is, obviously appealing to try to have the jury verdict overturned, to have my lawsuit dismissed. I certainly pray that doesn't happen. I want more than anything to have the jury, who spent 6 weeks of their life hearing all the evidence, carry the day. I also want Roxanne Conlon to get paid for the work that she did. I just think, the right to a jury trial is so important that we shouldn't let, that be easily overturned. So that's the end of my slideshow. I guess we've only got about 15 minutes left, and I know that people wanted to ask some questions. So maybe that would be a good time to go ahead and stop and to take some questions, give my voice a break here a second.
Could I just ask quickly whether the trial in Newton was with Jasper County or Polk County jurors?
The jurors were from Polk County. They were actually from the judicial district, so they weren't, I don't believe they were all necessarily from Polk County, but we were moved to another county just because of the courthouse, but the jurors remained the same.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, this is Rick. Thanks for sharing today and for your bravery through this all. That's amazing. And one thing, Tracy, my husband, he always commented from the business community how they looked to you. They were in awe of your professionalism and what you brought and what you did. Did any businesses or part of the community participate in your trial at all and come to your defense?
Good question. And first of all, I want to thank Rick and Tracy. They were one of my best friends in Des Moines. They mean a lot to me. So, thank you for that. And thank you for the question. Yeah, there were people within the business community that came to my defense. I made some great friends in my job as commissioner. within the business community, still have them as great friends. A couple of them actually testified at trial, not necessarily so much about my work as commissioner, but on a couple other matters like things that happened within our advisory committee. But one of the things that was most disappointing to me is that people that I had been colleagues with, I had tried cases with, people that had reached out to me to ask me questions for my own based upon my own expertise, later turn around and just be completely nasty. To say that I wasn't qualified for my job, or that I wasn't doing my job, or that I was biased. That was really hurtful. That people would act that way. And what I realized was a lot of these people were just concerned about their jobs. Most of them were defense attorneys within the system. They were trying to, keep their clients happy, and the best way to do it was, to use me as the punching bag for any time they lost a case, rather than the fact that they didn't probably try their case very well, or didn't put a whole lot of effort into their case. Most of the cases that came before me were things that I affirmed what the judge below me did, the hearing deputy. The first round in a workers' compensation case is heard by what's called a deputy commissioner. They hear the evidence. They meet the claimant and the employer and the attorneys. They hear all the arguments and the evidence, and then they render a decision. And then that would be appealed up to me if either party was dissatisfied. In most of the instances, I was merely affirming what the deputies did, or else I would add a little bit to the case if there was some new legal principle or something that I thought needed to be added to shore it up before someone could appeal it up to the district court. So just that level of putting their job and their attempt to get new clients ahead of just being a decent human being was troubling. But there were people within the business community who were very supportive. But it came out at trial that there was an entire organization of business people that they would sit around and talk about my sexual orientation. I mean, you're a business group, don't you have better things to talk about? I mean, it was just weird that became such a point of emphasis, not only in my confirmation hearings, but just as I was commissioner. That was such a touchy point for so many people, business leaders, legislators, and the like.
Not a question really, Chris, but I think it's telling about how overreaching the defendants were. That in one of the slides you showed, they described Michael Gartner as a hoary muckraker.
Yes.
Anybody who knows Michael Gartner knows that he may be a muckraker, but he's not hoary.
I had more of a legal question, since you are an attorney and since I have a lay understanding of civil versus criminal and all that. But how is it that Brenna Finnerty and Governor Branstad and anyone else who just straight up lied or just went out of their way to mischaracterize their interactions with you, how is it that they weren't charged with perjury or some kind of obstruction or just called out for what was very evidently just lies?
Yeah. Great question. Our case is civil. So what we were trying to do is show liability for violation of statutes and constitutional norms. And that's what we were successful in. One of my initial thoughts when this happened to me was this was flat out extortion. And I wanted the Attorney General's office to investigate or, take some action. They refused to do so. And one of the things that came to mind to me, and this is one of the things that, really sort of bothers me about Iowa now that I've been away, at least some distance. I get back a lot, obviously, but as I still read all the newspapers, I still watch some of the newscasts online and the like, because I like to stay involved with what's going on in my home state. There is really this good old boy network in Iowa that really holds back Iowa. Think how long we've had just a couple people be governor and attorney general and Polk County attorney. There's really a network of individuals who have been in power for a long, long time. And I think it crosses all the political spectrums. But why is it that there's such a limited pool of people that get to have that level of power in Iowa? And ask yourself, do they help each other out? I'm not going to make any accusations against anyone, but I always said that if after I was told, resign or we'll cut your pay by $40,000, if that wasn't extortion, would it have been extortion for me to say, well, then I'm not going to decide any cases unless you give me $100,000 bonus? If I did that, I bet you I'd be sitting in jail today.
Hey, Chris. Good morning. This is John Hale. And as you know, I have the honor and privilege of being Terry Hale's husband. That's my main claim to fame. But I did want to ask you, I'm not an attorney, but to the extent I've followed this, it appears that part of the argument of the state is that the chief executive has the power to do whatever he or she wants in a personnel context. And that seems to be the crux of that argument, trying to stay away from the discrimination aspect. Give us your take on that and what you think the basic messaging is all about.
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think I can answer it in a couple different ways. One, the defendants really want this argument to be that the governor can consider whatever he wanted in setting my pay, and I think they called it sort of a discretionary immunity. If he wanted to do it and he used his discretion, then it's okay. But as Roxanne pointed out at oral arguments, well, if he said that I'm going to use my discretionary immunity to say that I'm only going to hire white Christian men for these jobs, would that be allowable? Of course it couldn't. So you can't use that to say that you're going to be able to violate the Chapter 216, the Civil Rights Law of the state of Iowa. That just goes way too far. And the defendants kept pointing out, well, the ultimate way to have this case adjudicated was through an election. Elections mean everything to them. But to me, how can an election be the way to resolve such an issue if one side is willing to do certain things for certain campaign contributors to gain a lot of money and take action in response to people that gave them over $100,000? Elections don't mean a whole lot when it's not in a level playing field. When you've got someone willing to, accept $100,000 or more from one individual and then sit down with that individual and talk about one work comp case that they lost, and then to claim that they can take action against me because of that. Again, that goes probably back to Ryan's question more than anything else. But, the other thing is, there was that question, you're not on our team. Well, I wasn't necessarily on anybody's team because I was in a quasi-judicial position. My team was myself and the judges that were underneath of me so that we could all work together to hear cases and look at the evidence and decide those cases. So yeah, I was not on anybody's team to a large extent, but defendants continue to make the point that, well, the governor won an election. The governor won an election. He can have who he wants. Well, Chet Culver won his election. The people of Iowa chose Chet Culver to be governor in 2006, and he made the determination that I would be work comp commissioner. All the senators who unanimously voted me into my position were elected in their elections. So why is it the election of one man outweighs the elections of all of those other people who had, determined that I was entitled to be commissioner, that I was entitled to have a 6-year term of office? That doesn't just go away because one other person wins an election. It's not a clean slate. So I just don't think that those arguments that they made were at all convincing. But we'll see what the new court does.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick comment and a quick question. Gary Moore here. One, you were in a position that legislation and the Iowa legislature decided should not be subject to political whims because they provided a term of office that was longer than what the governor's term was. So I guess I don't see the why there's the argument that the election occurred and you no longer were qualified for office. I would enjoy hearing just a little bit more about what you're doing in Washington right now and what your present job incorporates.
Sure. So I came to Washington, D.C. in 2014, and my job when I arrived was to serve as a judge on the Employees Compensation Appeals Board. So that is a job which was within the Department of Labor, and I was appointed by Labor Secretary Tom Perez to be, Chairman and Chief Judge of the Employees Compensation Appeals Board. And we heard and decided cases under the Federal Employees Compensation Act. And it was a really fun job. I worked with amazing people that were appointed by numerous administrations, made lifelong friends with those individuals. In January, or actually after the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I was approached and asked if I would be willing to take on a different position, an administrative position. So I decided to go ahead and put my name in the ring for the position of Director of OWCP. It's a position that has approximately 1,500 employees. We have 3 programs underneath of us: the Federal Employees Program in Longshore, the Black Lung Program, which is for minors who are disabled or deceased because of their service or their work as minors. And then also the Energy Employees Compensation, which is for people that worked in munitions plants and the like, where they were put into contact unknowingly with toxic substances and have developed very serious conditions. So my position now is not as a judge. It's more of an administrative position. So I handle, all the matters of that, are within OWCP. I work directly with the leadership of all the different programs. And I get my first one-on-one with the new secretary, Marty Walsh, next Monday. So I'm excited about that. We've got some great ideas of how to make things work better. And I work with a great group of career individuals, who understand their jobs and do them really, really well. So my job is more leadership at this point, making sure that the agency works as it should.
Any other questions? We're getting close to 8 o'clock.
Well, just
Okay.
a comment real quick. Congratulations on your new appointment by President Biden on his first day of office. I think that
Yes,
was
exciting.
really incredible. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing. And it makes us hopeful that some things that have happened over the past 4 years can be reversed. I want to thank you, Chris, for joining us. We absolutely enjoyed your presentation, and I can say I and the majority of us had no idea how much you went through during the years of this litigation. It takes extreme courage to stand up and fight back. It's commendable. We hope it will set a precedent that will help other LGBTQ people in their struggle to be treated equally. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
hard to do an applause when it's virtual, but it's the best we can do. I do want to just mention or re-mention the Iowa Safe Schools event, the annual Governors Conference. This is a big deal for them, and Iowa Safe Schools does amazing work. Go to their website, at least look at what they've done, and consider the April 12th and 13th event. Let's see, upcoming speakers. May 7th will be Pete Montgomery. He is a spokesman for the People for the American Way. He tracks white supremacy groups and other hate groups. June 4th, which was originally our fellowship presentations, but it's been moved to July, will be Reverend Jim Conrad. He's the Town View Baptist Church in Georgia that is open and welcoming congregation and was expelled from the Southern Baptist Convention. So that both of those will be very interesting. We're still working on our July speaker, and that will be our awards to the scholars this year. And that is all I have for speakers. The meeting is now officially adjourned, but we welcome those that would like to stay on and chat at the Zoom meeting will remain open. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining us.